Welcome to Programming Rainbow. In this video, we will continue on this series of the Beginner's Guide to SDL2 in Haskell. This is the third video. If you would like to follow along with this video, you can go to github.com, Programming Rainbow, Beginner's Guide to SDL2 in Haskell. You can clone that repository, move inside the directory, and let's take a look at what you'll see. Start up NVim or whatever editor you're using. And the code over here is all the code for all the different videos. Since this is the third video, we're continuing on the code from the second video. In app, you will find the final code if you're just cloning it right now. So you'll want to go and copy from this video 2 into app. The code from here, that's main HS from here into app. Since this is the third video, that's where we'll be starting off with. Again, all these old ones here, we're using a different style. They're using IOREF instead of the state T transformer monad. Okay, so where we left off with the last video was that we were able to close the window, but I did forget to change the title here. So this should be to close. And we'll just run it real quick and make sure, whoops, I didn't want to do that, but okay. I was just copying over from last time. That's fine. Okay, so it does say up here where my title would be 02 close, and I can close the window whenever I want. Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do in this video is we're going to bring in a new module. It's going to be the SDL image module, and we are going to use that to load PNG images, and we will display a background image in this video. Okay, so since we are talking about a new module, this was the SDL, but we are going to be in SDL.image. So this is a slightly different module. This is equivalent to the C version of SDL2_image. So I can't click on the documentation here because I didn't update it, but I can go to the last documentation. I can click on this, and that will give me to where I want to go. So with all SDL modules, the first thing we need to do is bring it online. We need to initialize it. And we do have some options that we can pass into it. If I go down to initialize right here, let's see, I can initialize it, but I can send in some initialize flags. So I want to send in a flag, the PNG one. So this is the flag that I want. You can actually send in multiple flags, but I'm telling it specifically that I'm going to be loading PNG images. So it can make sure it gets that up and running. And if it fails, then I will know it failed because we have our safe run. Okay, so let's do that. And remember, I'm going to bring this in as qualified, and this is going to be SDL2.image. So everything that we see on these pages will need to be prefixed with SDL2.image. So up here, I'm going to bring it in. And this one's going to be .image, just like that. So everything's going to be prefixed with this SDL2.image for me now. That anything that I'm using specifically to that module. Okay, and again, I talked about this in the first video, but I've already included all these. Where is it? In package YAML. These are already part of the project that you'll pull down, so they're already in there. It's already going to be compiled if you've run stack yet. The first time you run stack, it's going to go through and grab all these dependencies and compile them. So SDL2 image is right here. It's already part of this. It's already been added. So you don't need to add it here, but if you were making your own project, you would need to add it here as one of your dependencies, as well as SDL. You would need SDL and SDL image, and you'd need text. You need at least those, and obviously the base one is always there. Okay, I'm going to close this. So we have imported import qualified SDL image. So what we want to do is we want to initialize it, but we want to use that. Where is it? We can send it a list of flags. Let's see what my code looks like. I'll open up my code for video number 3. That's already been done, and we'll just use that as a reference, but I'm pretty sure it's just bringing in a list of flags. Yeah, right here. So to see this, we're using that qualified SDL2 or SDL.Image.initialize is our function. And this is a list. So we can add other ones in here if we wanted JPEGs, everything else. But for the project that we're building in this series, we are only going to be using PNG images. So I'm just using PNG here. And we're going to use safe run. We're just going to give it a simple error message, and error initializing SDL2 image. And also we need to shut this down. So there's a quit on this as well, just like SDL has. It has its own quit, which is right down here. So that's why we need to qualify this one differently, because otherwise we would get these naming collisions happening. Okay, so I'm just going to go into the code. This is pretty simple since we've set up all the boilerplate already. This is going to look very much like the one above it. So it's going to be safe run. And then I'm going to put this inside some brackets because it's not just a single, because this is going to be an action that safe run is running, and this action is already a function applied to something else. So for me, it's going to be SDL image, and then it's initialize. I think it's just initialize. And now we have this list, and it is going to be SDL image. And I think it's init PNG or something like that. Yeah, it's init PNG, all capitals on the PNG and a capital I. Okay, so that is what we want safe run to run. And if it errors, we want this message. SDL2 image. Okay. And assuming that this all works out now, that safe run didn't shut the program down and didn't clean up after itself, since SDL image has been brought online, I want to be able to tell it that it needs to be taken offline when it's time to shut down the program, or if something errors later on. So I'm going to add clean, and we just need to tell SDL image to shut down. So it's going to be SDL.Image, and it's quit. Just like this one up here, except it's for image. We do have it brought in, right? Oh, what's happening here? No, sorry. This must be part of the language server. I don't want that. So it added in, well, let's back it up here. So it brought in SDL again, and I didn't add this line. Brought in SDL a second time and qualified it as SDL image. And then I'm bringing in SDL image. So it's totally confused of what's going on. Something added that for me that is not correct. The language server, I'm sure, did that. So, okay. So we're okay again now here. Yeah. No problems, no errors. So this is going to bring the image online. So we have this other thing. I want to separate this initializing SDL and the loading of media, of assets for the game. I want them to be separate. So what I'm going to do here is, instead of returning game data here, I'm just going to return the window and the render. And I'm going to make a new function called load media. And that's going to take in the window and the renderer, and then load everything else that it needs to load, and then return that as game data. So the game data is going to be the output of the load media, not the output of initialize SDL, init SDL. Okay. So I'm going to just start writing these load media. And I want to take, let's see, SDL. I want to take these two items in right here, which is a window and a render. Window. I want to take these in, and this is going to be in the context of, it's going to have the same return as up here, right here, the state t game state IO, and it is still going to return game data. It's going to be returned from down here. Okay, that's going to be its type. The comma here. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be taking in. Okay, and we want to load an image, and then we want to return this with the image as well as the game data. Okay, so how can we load the image? Well, we're going to use safe load, but let's look at it here. We're going to load a PNG, instead of loading it as a surface, we're going to load it directly as a texture. That means it's hardware accelerated. So we're using this function right here, load texture, and this needs the render, and then it's going to return a texture. Okay, so pretty straightforward. We just need the render, and we're going to get back the texture. However, we want to run this through safe run. That's why the return of safe run is polymorphic, because we don't know exactly what type we're getting back out of it. This time we're going to get a texture back. I think that's all that we need to say about this. So let's just look at it. So I'm calling it background. We are going to need to add background to our game data. So it's going to start complaining here until everything lines up. Pretty basic, pretty simple. Just have an error message, same thing, and then we're returning the thing. So I'm going to call this background. And this is going to be, why are we not tab aligned here? Okay, so I'm going to use safe run to run the function that's going to return our texture. And what's the function that does this is going to be SDL load texture, but we need the render. And so the render is sorry, I needed to add it in up here. I didn't do that. Sorry, window first. Okay, so we have the window and the render. I'm going to use the render. And we also need the string to where the, is it listed here? Sorry. Yeah, we need the path file right here, which is a string. And this is just a string to the path to where the image is. So let's look at the image. It's over here in the images folder. And I want to use this background.png image. So I'm going to use the relative path to where, the top level directory is. So for me, it's images. And then background.png. So now what if this fails? The safe run, we need to tell it to give us an error. So I'm going to say error loading texture. So I know what exactly happened. Now, if this does successfully run, I want to add something to the cleanup. I need to unload this texture. So I'm going to say add clean. And for SDL to unload a texture, it's called destroy texture. So it's SDL destroy texture right there. Let's see if that's here. It's not going to be an image. It's actually an SDL. SDL image is allowing us to load images other than bitmaps. But it's converting them to textures for us. But SDL actually is the one that is defining what a a texture is. So it can load like bitmaps and stuff like that and convert surfaces to textures, but it can't load PNG images. So SDL image allows us to load PNG images, but the texture itself is part of SDL, not SDL image. Destroy texture takes a texture and it's an IO action. It's under SDL data texture. Yeah, it's in the SDL module. So we want to destroy this texture whenever we do our shutdown. So that is SDL destroy texture, and then the texture we want to destroy is the background. Okay, so that's all we need to do with the load media because that's our thing. But we do want to return, we need to return the game data. Our game data is going to have a new field in it now, but I haven't added it yet. So we do know we have the window and the renderer. So it's just going to be like this right here. I'm just going to grab this. So we're returning that, but we are going to have this new field and it's going to be background. I'm going to call it game background. Okay, and it's going to complain because this doesn't exist yet. I'm just going to add it up here. And the type of this is going to be an SDL texture. So that's an SDL texture. Now the other one's going to complain that I didn't fill up all the fields. Did it change something up here again? I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, so SDL load texture, not in scope. Oh, this is SDL image. This is all the complaints about the because of the return. So let's start cleaning some of these up. So this needs to return out the tuple. So we need to change this. This is going to be SDL.Window and SDL.Renderer. And that down here needs to be reflected. Okay. Other things still going to complain all over the place because of this guy right here. Okay, so this is outputting a window and a renderer tuple. This one is inputting a window and a renderer tuple and outputting the data. Some of this might be because of this right here. What we need to do is we need to add this load media here. And then that. Okay. Okay, so we still have an issue. Let's change this to background before I forget again. Free background. Make sure it's not imported anything funny again. Okay, so my game background is a texture. Game state is still the same. What's happening here? This is not right. That's where that should be. Oh, okay. Just the indentation was messed up. I wasn't seeing the simple problem. So what's happening is our initializer it initializes a bunch of stuff, but it really just outputs a window and a renderer. So after everything's initialized, I am running load media and I'm taking that output of the window and renderer and I'm sending it into load media because I need to, one, use the renderer, and two, I'm going to package the window and the renderer up into the game data. So I have those two coming in. I'm using the renderer to load my texture with safe run. I'm getting my background texture. I'm also adding this which this actually can be, sorry, one line like this. So if this safe run does load correctly, I am adding to the cleanup to destroy the texture. So that will be on the list of game actions, the cleanup actions that happen. And after that, I am just returning now, I'm constructing my game data with the window, the render, and the background. So that's what's coming out of here. So down here, when I sequence it, or when I use this bind over and over again, initialize is returning. Yeah, all of this is in the context of the state T transformer with the game state. So that's throughout all of this. But this one is outputting the window and the render. That's what this is inputting. And then this is outputting game data. And that's what this is being input to here. The game data is being input to here. So I've just separated it out now. So now every time I load media, I'm loading it here. If I need to bring new modules online, I'm doing it here. Hope that makes sense. So let's try this. We have loaded an image, but we have not actually displayed it. So right here where I'm getting the render from the game data, I can also get the background. Since it's a let, I don't need to put let again. I'm just going to type background. And this is going to be game background applied to game data. And then here, let's see if we look at the SDL copy. So it's part of the SDL package. This draws something to the render. So it's SDL copy, and it takes the render, it takes the background, and then it takes two maybes. These can be just a SDL rectangle or a nothing. And because I want it to be drawn on the entire screen, this is a source rectangle and this is a destination rectangle. I really want to pull this up to show it. So the copy, this one uses the render and it uses the texture. And then it has this maybe rectangle with the cient. This is a SDL rectangle. And it has two of them. One is a source rectangle and one is a destination rectangle. So the source rectangle is how much of the image that we loaded, that background PNG image, how much of that do we want to use? Now, if we use nothing, it's just going to use the entire image we loaded. So that image is an 800 by 600 pixel image. So the rectangle is going to be the entire 800 by 600. And the destination rectangle is how do we want it to be displayed on the screen? We could tell it to be 10 by 10, and it could just be shrunken down into a little 10 by 10 square. But I want that entire background to be stretched to the entire screen size. So for this instance, I'm going to use nothing for the source rectangle and nothing for the destination, because it'll use the entire source and it'll stretch on the entire destination. And I'll show you, like, if we change the size of it, it's going to stretch. So later on, when we load other images, we will create a rectangle to display them per their correct size. But because this is the background image that takes up the whole screen, I'm using nothings. So this is here, and this is in the docs. This is SDL video renderer. So I'm going to use copy. It's going to be SDL copy. I need the render, I need the background, and then I need a source rectangle and a destination rectangle. But since these are maybes, I can just use nothing and nothing. So SDL copy, and we need the render. We need the image, which I just pulled up here, background. And then nothing and nothing. Nothing has an G in it still, right? So, you know, you don't have to do this up here. You could do it like, you could say game background, game data. You could do it like that if you wanted, but I just did it like that because it's a little bit easier. I'm using render over and over again, and it's a little bit cleaner. And you could do that for the render as well. Okay, so that's just going to stretch it on the whole screen, so we should just be able to show it now. And it says Haskell. Now we can see if this won't load, what happens. So if I were to spell this file wrong, let's just say I took the G off, and then we load it, or compile and run it again, we should get an error. There we go. Now here is the error message that I chose to put, the error loading texture, and there's the colon added. And then this is the error message that we get out of Haskell and SDL. And this is me being shown that it was still, the cleanup actions were still run afterwards. Okay. And what if we load a different image? It'll be all stretched wonky probably. So we can load the SDL logo, which is actually a small image. So when I go to load that, it's going to look really ugly because it's going to be stretched. So SDL logo, because we should have a correct size rectangle for it. But it'll work. It won't error. It'll just stretch it, make it really ugly. Yeah. Okay. And we could put it back to the original one. But we could change the size of the screen. So we have a width of 800. What if I made it 600 and say 800? We'll see that the screen will be a different size, and also the image will be stretched again because we're using that nothing. Okay. And you'll see that the letters are a little bit taller than they were before, it's not. So that's why we're using nothing, because the actual background image I'm using is actually the same size as the screen. Okay, let's just look at what we did real quick. We brought in qualified SDL2 image, and we went down into initialize SDL, and we brought the module online using the safe run. It is SDL.Image.initialize, and also there is a list of flags, init flags, and I use the SDL.Image.initPNG because I'm using PNG images. And we ran this with safe run, so we have our error message, saying if SDL2 error initializing SDL2 image, and we have our add clean that quits it. And you can see these functions have the same name here. So it is good that they are in a different, that is qualified as SDL.image. Okay, since that is online, we changed the way that init SDL works. It no longer returns the game data. It just returns the window and the render, because we've made a new function here that takes in that window and render, and it uses the renderer to load a texture with SDL.image.loadTexture. That's why we needed to bring in that SDL.image module. And it uses the render, and it uses a file path. And we have our custom message here, our error loading texture. If this did load, the way to unload a texture is with SDL.destroyTexture, and the texture name here is background. So that is added to the list of things to unload. We are returning back the game data from this one finally, with the window, the render, and the game, and the game background, which was added up here as well. This is of type SDL.texture. Okay, so since that's all loaded, the rest of it's the same. We receive game data here. This is all the same. The only thing that we've added here is this function, this copy function, that takes a render, a texture, and a source rectangle and a destination rectangle. But if you use nothing for either one or both of them, it's using the entire of the source and the entire of the destination. And here we're just, for ease, for simplicity, I'm just pulling out binding or defining I'm letting background be the texture that is in from game data. Okay, so this is all the same except we've added load media into the mix here. So the output of init SDL is the window and the renderer. That is the input of load media. The output of load media is the game data. And all of these are in the context of the state T monad transformer that is using game state. Okay, so that's a bit for this video. I hope that was entertaining. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the video. And thanks for watching. Have a good day.